My father was a first-generation pastor of an immigrant church. Whenever he experienced this conflict with second-generation members and so forth, he received a sense of pain and woundedness that is so deep and personal.
Right from the beginning, actually, we started encountering this issue of generational differences. I was really excited when this program came up. I said, well, we've been wrestling with this. We have no answers. Maybe I'll get answers this time.
We're all trying to best live out what it means for us to fulfill the Great Commission. And yet the Great Commission looks very different between first and second gen. First gen communicative styles are sometimes very much misunderstood by the second generation.
I actually encountered the Lord for the first time in an immigrant church. We have those things that people crave. We're not perfect as immigrant churches, but we do have something to offer. So we hope to also, as we deal with the internal, then we grow in our capacity externally too.
Some of the challenges that we face were the complaints from parents regarding their children. And I also have had this idea that maybe if we were bigger and maybe had more facility, more resources, we'll be able to manage those issues.
It's easy to wonder, hey, is it really going to be worth it at the end? All the blood, sweat, and tears I have to make, and I think for pastors it's time and energy, that I have to carve out and sacrifice in order to invest in building these relationships with the first gen. Is it really going to pay off?
I just like the idea that we are focusing on just one area particularly, which has to do with the different generations.
A lot of us grew up in a context where we don't really know why we're here. You know, you don't really belong in America because you don't look the part of a white American. And yet, at the same time, you don't belong in the first gen. And so you're in this kind of third space. And so a lot of us are still wrestling with that fact. And what does that really mean? And when you send these confused people out on mission, you get confused values and confused mission.
I think what TICI Learning Journey is, it's in some ways it's like a hospital. It's for those churches that painfully recognize that there are some aspects of their intergenerational ministry that is not going well. They're stuck. And they are looking for that place where they can come, that they can receive that needed healing and hope so that they could continue their journey as an immigrant church.
I think the gospel really speaks into these, and that is in our unity, that we're a witness. Jesus prayed for this, that we will be one. So I think that's what reconciliation looks like. It's not denying our diversity, it's not denying our pain, it's working through it until we're actually able to love one another and want to work with one another.
They got to hear 11 other churches wrestling with a very similar kind of challenges. And I think it gave them a sense of permission that, you know, this is not just our problem, but it's a challenge that is being faced by so many other immigrant churches.
It's very obvious that we can just share experiences and from that draw, from the experiences of others to see how we can best manage these situations that we find ourselves in.
That basic level of empathy and being like, oh, there's somebody else going through this. We're not the only ones, and we're not the only ones trying to do something different. And there's hope for us.
How do we then portray Christ in seeing these opportunities and growing from these points of weakness as an immigrant church? I think immigrant churches are part of God's story. Every church has a story, and we can think of these stories as our church stories, but it's really God's story. And it's worthwhile to think, whether you're an immigrant church or not, why it is that God has us together and what unique mission He has for us, because behind every story is a mission.
So the TICI Learning Journey, what we hope to produce is that multiple approaches and models of doing intergenerational, intercultural reconciliation in and through Christ, so that it could be a rich resources for all these different types of immigrant churches that are trying to address this challenge well. How good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity.